my dick get big as the Eiffel Tower, so I can fuck the world for 72 hours. Goddamn, I feel amazing.
Is a sophomore slump a real thing? It didn't really seem to be a problem for Kendrick, but then again, Kendrick is far from your typical rapper. To back things up a little bit, let me first explain what the sophomore slump is and why it's such a phenomenon when it comes specifically to hip-hop. When an artist gets popular enough to be known by the general public or the mainstream, it's usually on their first major label album. Up until then, mixtapes and loose tracks suffice, but the artist is likely either gaining local or underground buzz before then. Take Lil Pump for example. Pump gathered a massive SoundCloud following, and if you were a fan of hip-hop, you probably knew who he was when his self-titled album came out. But people who casually listen to mainstream hip-hop, like Drake, Kendrick, or Kanye, generally had no idea who he was. Enter Warner Brothers and the rollout for Lil Pump the album. After the album dropped, Lil Pump became a more mainstream name, and although I wouldn't say his album has much replay value, it's a good example of someone just hitting the mainstream. Pump has plenty of eyes on him now, and we'd love to see how he can follow up a Billboard charting album and potentially one of the biggest songs of 2017 with Gucci Gang. So I want to make one thing clear here before we keep going. The term sophomore slump does not mean the second project you ever released. It just means the album following your breakout project. And after you hit that breakout project, there's two sides to the coin. All eyes are on you, and we've seen artists far exceed expectations and solidify themselves for another 5 years in the spotlight. And we've also seen artists become just as irrelevant as they were 6 months before that. It's a truly daunting time in any musician's career. So let's take a look at some of the good and the bad and explain a few sophomore slumps. In 2009, after really only one official mixtape to his name, Kid Cudi took rap in a direction it had never really been before. His first major album, Man on the Moon, End of the Day, signaled a huge turning point in the way hip-hop sounded and was perceived as a near classic album, even today. So like I said, all eyes were on Kid Cudi. He had signed to Kanye's label Good Music at the time, and Make Her Say, Pursuit of Happiness, and his biggest song, Day and Night, had all gone platinum. He had to follow it up with something great. Luckily for Cudi, it was no problem, as he delivered, just a year later, Man on the Moon 2, The Legend of Mr. Rager. Now, you could definitely argue sales-wise that this was a sophomore slump. Cudi sold almost 1 million records with Man on the Moon 1, and Man on the Moon 2 did about 200,000 less copies. But sonically and culturally, the impact was definitely felt. Erase Me and Mr. Rager added another layer to his sound and his persona, and musically, a lot of people felt he was at his peak. His sophomore album in this case solidified him among the superstars in rap for the next few years. One of the more current examples is that of Chance the Rapper. Chance had to start getting some buzz when he released 10 Day, a mixtape that put him on the radar of every label and brought him stardom in the Chicago area and on blogs. But it wasn't really until the release of Acid Rap that Chance got his mainstream appeal. Acid Rap was a project that gave Chance the opportunity to perform at some of the biggest venues and festivals and meet his rap heroes. A few of them even tried to sign him. He became a phenomenon for his independent approach, even more so than Macklemore, who was at the time coming off Thrift Shop and branding himself as the biggest independent artist in hip-hop. Chance was in a place where he couldn't disappoint, and his sophomore project needed to be absolutely perfect if he was going to have any hope of topping Acid Rap. Again, he delivered with Coloring Book. No Problem was a song people hailed as a return of Lil Wayne, and the rest of the album outdid Acid Rap surprisingly, with even more jazzy, beautiful instrumentals and the perfect amount of features to make the album all about Chance, but bring out the best in his guests. But not every sophomore album is like these. These are the ones that rappers aspire to have, but it's so much harder than it looks. Here are a few examples of albums that didn't quite make fans go crazy, whether it be the actual music or the issues surrounding the artist at the time. Mike Jones was on top of the rap world. He's not a one-hit wonder, but he's pretty darn close. His debut album, Who Is Mike Jones, helped fuel the fire of the singles Still Tippin' and Back Then, so Mike was ready to keep releasing music and help Houston take over the mainstream. But his next album, The Voice, just couldn't measure up. For starters, Mike was involved in some beef that didn't help him make friends in the industry, and the music on the album proved that Mike just didn't have the same star power he used to with Who Is Mike Jones. Again, with a more current example, I'm looking at someone like Big Sean. Sean came into good music at the perfect time. He'd been releasing his Finally Famous mixtapes, and after getting signed by Kanye, putting out Finally Famous the album, it was an easy slam dunk. It helped that Finally Famous the album had songs like Dance with Nicki Minaj and Last with Chris Brown to help it go platinum. But his sophomore album, Hall of Fame, didn't quite live up to expectations. Only one of the singles charted, and Sean explained in an interview that he had wanted to show people another side of himself. The side of him that was always optimistic and thinking about sensitive topics, but it looked like that wasn't what people wanted to hear. Unlike Mike Jones, Sean got rid of his sophomore slump on his next two albums, Dark Sky Paradise and I Decided, after they both went platinum. So that goes to show it's possible to avoid the sophomore slump in some way, you just need to get back up. But do you agree that these albums are sophomore slumps? And do you think the sophomore slump is a real problem in hip-hop? Let us know in the comments.
If you like the video, then subscribe to TKW Presents and All Def Music, and find us on Twitter at Thomas K. Welker and All Def Music.
What up, squad? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can hit the subscribe button. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram by clicking the links below. Until next time, thanks for watching All Def Music.